Welcome to our Ask a Specialist workshop. This core strength workshop is brought to you by Las Cumbres Community Services. Our organization began its services in Los Alamos County over 50 years ago. We currently provide a wide range of services for families in Santa Fe, Rio Arriba, Taos, and Los Alamos counties. You can check out our website and the services we offer in each community. All services are free of charge. Thanks to a grant from Los Alamos County, we've expanded our services in Los Alamos. I'm Camille Westcott. I am an occupational therapist. It's almost been 25 years now, and I've worked at Las Cumbres for about 15 years. I've mostly worked with younger kids, but I also work with older kids at a clinic too. And in our core strength workshop today, we will be talking about what core strength is, why it's important, and how to improve your child's core strength. And today we also have Allie Clark. Allie, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you, Camille. I'm Allie Clark. I am a physical therapist. I got my doctorate in physical therapy in 2020, and I've been working with Las Cumbres since then. I've always known that I wanted to work in pediatrics since I wanted to do physical therapy, and that's just because this is such a formative time, a formative thing for parents to be helping their children through. And these are such big milestones. So it's very empowering and humbling to be able to help families and come alongside them and give them confidence in how to help their child reach these milestones. So that is why I do what I do.
If you have any questions during the workshop, you can put those on our webpage, and there is a link in the chat.
Yes, it'll also be at the end of our slideshow, so you can screen grab that if you need to. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up our presentation. And that's us. Okay.
So why does core strength matter? This is, if you look at these pictures, this is what I think of when I think of core strength. I remember, I guess I never cared too much about these machines when I was a kid, but as an adult, I remember the first time I noticed these feet that come out on these machines, and I had to think about, why are they there? And when I look at the picture of the machine at the top of the slope with the arm way out, I don't know if anybody else feels this way, but I feel like that machine is ready to topple. We are upright creatures. In these machines, they have a low, solid foundation for their, and that's where their core strength comes from. But because we are upright creatures, which is on the next slide, we are upright creatures. So we need that strength in our center. That's our core strength. And unlike the machines in the last pictures, we have 4 things that are going to stick out from us. So we need that proximal strength, our proximity here, to get that distal mobility out here in the distance. So we have to be really strong in the center to have accuracy with our movements, to precisely kick, to precisely throw. And have really good coordination with our mouths even is affected by our core strength. So yeah, gross motor development comes first. First, we see kids hit their gross motor milestones, and then their fine motor and oral motor milestones come next. So that's why we really need that core strength, so that we can develop all this stuff further away from the center, the core strength. And we also need balanced flexion and extension. So some kids we see are really strong in doing like sit-ups and pulling their body forward because they've spent more time on their back. But to have good posture, you also need good extension, which is all the strength in the back of your neck, the back of your back. You need strength on both sides. So when you're on your tummy, you're strengthening all those back muscles, and that's why tummy time is so great, which is probably on the next slide. So why do kids struggle with poor core strength? One of the big hypotheses that I often hear is the trouble with core strength came up more once the Back to Sleep campaign started, which is great for preventing some sudden infant death syndrome, but not so great for developing strength. So people often forget it's back to sleep, but the other side of that is that the baby is on their tummy when they're awake and supervised. So that's when you develop the back muscles and get that nice balance between flexion and extension and get really great posture that helps you have the coordination to do everything else. And with the emergence and availability of electronics, video games, iPads, and kids spending a lot of time like this, that's also really affecting our postural development for adults and kids both. And unfortunately, we do have a more sedentary lifestyle now, probably because of the electronics. We're more likely to spend time inside with our video games and shows and less time outside. And I think people maybe feel less safe leaving their kids outside unsupervised. And so kids don't spend as much time outside. And that does affect kids' development. The availability of seats for babies and jumpers and standers and Johnny jumpers and all those things that we like to put our kids in, we call containers. And the backpacks and the slings and are all good. It's good to keep your baby close to you, but if they spend too much time there, then they're not getting enough time on the floor and developing the strength in their postural muscles. So it's important to get that tummy time. We also see with kids spending less time on the floor that there's reflexes that they have as babies that are supposed to become integrated. And when they're unintegrated, that blocks development, it slows it down. So those normal movements down on the floor, especially crawling, really are important for leading to other steps in development. So here I put babies need more floor time, but really everybody needs some floor time to counteract all the time we are hunched over our computers.
So one question you may ask is, how would I know that that my child has decreased core strength? What are some signs that would show me that this is maybe an issue? And one of the first ones we can do even very early on with a baby is to hold them in kind of an airplane position, which you can see kind of the picture of the baby doing the airplane motion, but imagine a parent's hands holding them there. So if you hold your baby like that, they should have the strength and somewhat of a reflex as well to be able to hold their body, not only kind of straight in a plank, but to lift their head too and to look up. And so if they don't have the strength to be able to do that, then they are in a state of some decreased core strength. If you try and kind of pull them up to sitting from laying on their back and they're not able to do much of the pull, they probably don't have enough core strength. We'll talk about kind of by what age here in a minute too, but if they're not meeting milestones, if your kiddo is significantly behind on crawling, rolling, sitting up on their own, one of the things that could be kind of hindering them a little bit is they don't have the core strength that they need. So we'll talk some more too about ways that that you can help. Two of the biggest things that I see too in kiddos that have weak core is the way they sit, especially in more of a toddler age. So we have this W sitting picture and the sacral sitting picture. And W sitting, the legs look like a W, so the knees are turned in and the feet are out. This is a position that all kids do sit in. So please hear me that it can be normal for your kiddo to sit like this. But if your kiddo sits like this all the time, pretty much any time that they're sitting on the floor, that they're sitting like this, it's likely because they have some weakness in their core. So they're kind of relying on some other ways to sit to hold themselves in a sitting position instead of using their core. Same thing applies to this sacral sitting. So it means that the sacrum at the bottom of your spine is actually kind of resting on the floor instead of sitting up in good posture. So if you can see, the baby is sitting in good posture, but that child is kind of slumped backwards, the spine's curving out, and that sacrum is just kind of resting on the floor. The core is not engaged for him.
Yeah, and with that W sitting, it makes me think of that picture of the machine in the beginning with the feet out, like the kids trying to get a wider base of support to um, compensate for that low core strength.
Absolutely. So we have here a list of kind of just some expectations of what your child should be able to do if their core strength is developing appropriately. Um, Early on, that's really just engaging those tummy muscles at all. And usually one of the first ways that we see that is when a baby starts to lift up those feet towards their hands and even get them into their mouth. So while that's great for some other developmental purposes as well, having to lift the legs up towards the head really engages those tummy muscles for the first time. So if I see a kiddo that's not rolling or sitting much by the age that maybe they should be, I'll ask, do they play with their feet? Do they bring their feet to their mouth? Because if not, then that may be the first thing we need to do to try and get those tummy muscles to start to work. Rolling, of course, is going to get the sides of the core involved and being able to twist and rotate in all directions. And then by roughly 6 months, we'd like to see them sitting upright. So that's a big step in getting appropriate core strength, is being able to hold our body upright and sit independently. Next would be crawling. Typical crawling really is between 7 and 11 months on average. So it's a pretty big range there, but we're talking about full on crawling all the way on hands and knees, not belly crawling, army crawling, anything like that, but reciprocal hands and knees crawling, holding the belly off the floor. And that's where the core really has to come in, because it has to support the body off the floor and let the arms and legs move. So without a really good amount of core strength by that age, crawling can be really difficult. Beyond that, we want to see a kiddo being able to pull up to stand by about the time that they're a year old, being able to grab onto furniture or or whatever it is, a box, to be able to stand themselves up and hold their bodies upright, and then beginning to walk. By the time they're between 10 and 15 months is typical for walking, so another big range, but we want to see that they can, kind of similar to crawling, they can hold the muscle tone in their center of their body, but then also move the arms and legs like Camille was talking about. They have the stability proximally closest to their body to be able to move their limbs and to stay balanced. And that's where we see core strength that's really important in those next couple of years as kiddos start to move in all different directions. We want them to be able to react posturally to any challenge in their movement. If they're running, if they're stepping over an obstacle, if something comes at them, they are able to react and not just fall over, that their muscles, the postural muscles along their trunk, respond, and they don't have to take several steps or bend over and put their hands down to keep their balance because they don't have enough muscle tone in the center of their body to keep themselves upright. Okay, so now we're going to talk to you about some activities that we can do to help promote core strength. If you're thinking, goodness, my kiddo does need some help in this area, they're not progressing maybe as they should be, or if you're thinking, I just want to make sure that they have a good, strong core, because that's something we all probably need to work on more. We have several activities here that we're going to explain for you that you can do with kids of different ages to help to promote more core strength. So one of the first ones, you can just sit on something that is unstable, like an exercise ball. You could also do this with pillows or cushions, anything that is not a stable surface, so that when the kiddo is moved, you still can have your hands nearby or on them to make sure they're safe, that they're reacting, like we were talking about with an older kiddo, they're able to react to changes and challenges in movement with the body. With a younger kiddo, this is actually one of my babies, my 10-month-old. I have twins, but this is one of them. He's sitting there on the floor and I'm lifting his feet off of the ground. And that's actually a really tough challenge for the core. If you're curious about how difficult some of these are, try them yourself. So try and lift your feet up off the floor with your bottom on the ground. That really engages both the front and the back of the trunk muscles. Another one that I had him do is play at a box. A diaper box is a great height for a baby to be able to play on their knees. And so they're having to support their core, stay upright, especially if they're not leaning on that surface. And then pretty soon he'll start doing what mine constantly do now, is they'll put their hands on the box and then they walk on their knees. So they're still on their knees, but they're walking with that box, just pushing it. And that will make the core burn as well. It really works hard, very similarly to crawling. So if a kiddo is not crawling, this is a great activity as well to strengthen the core enough to be able to do that. I have a picture here of the baby in a little play gym that is set up perfectly to be able to engage the core, especially some of that early months that I was talking about, that lifting the feet up towards the hands, lifting the feet towards the mouth is kind of the first time that we get those muscles engaged. And so if they're not really interested in doing that, we may have to help them see that their feet are interesting, or have something that is interesting for them to move their feet towards. This one has a piano at the feet, so it really promotes some good kicking, flexing and extending of the legs. But what I would do also is just scoot that baby back a little bit. So the hanging toys aren't where they can bat with their hands, they're where the feet are. So then they're wanting to kick those dangly, noisy musical toys with their feet to make them move. And that's getting that same motion of having to lift the legs up with the trunk and core muscles.
So like I said earlier, it is great at any age to be spending some time on your stomach. My son is a teenager and I go in his room and he's playing video games, and I'm always asking him, now spend some time on your stomach too, or he'll be laying on one side and lay on your other side too. We want to be strengthening all our muscles and have that balance and strength. So some things that often kids who aren't strong, they need to do it for a really brief amount of time at first. So they might only lay down to do one piece of the puzzle and then sit up to do a couple pieces and lay down for one more piece. Or color, if your kid's motivated by coloring, that's a great time to lay on your stomach too. And it actually helps develop the shoulder girdle too, to get some more strength. But coloring is a great time to do tummy time, doing puzzles on the floor, video games, watching TV. I don't know, Allie, have you got any other great activities for when kids are laying on their stomach?
That's a pretty good list. Yeah, pretty much anything that a kid is doing that they're typically kind of stationary, sitting or laying down. Usually there's a way that you can figure out to flip them over on their belly and be working to lift the head and use those back muscles a little bit, so that it's still an exercise, even though they're resting or coloring or doing a little bit more of a stationary activity.
Yeah, and I guess the other thing some kids enjoy too is just doing like face-to-face interactions with a little baby. You know, you're just making silly faces and silly noises, and the thing they enjoy the most is your face. With older kids, you could do, you know, copying each other's faces, making silly noises, doing songs, things like that. It just depends on what your kid's interested in.
Yeah.
So these are some of the games that I like for doing core strength. Oh, I'm going to use my monkey. So I have the kids sit on my lap and we're facing each other and we'll hold hands and we'll just sing the rowboat game. I guess the blur doesn't work real great for this, but the kid goes down first and then I lay down, and they think it's hilarious when I lay down and they have to pull me up and then they go down. So they're working both on pulling me up and when they're laying down, pulling themselves up. But a lot of kids really enjoy that. Just throwing in the rowboat song makes it fun. And I know a lot of kids love being upside down. So, you know, when you're sitting at the couch and they're sitting on your lap facing you again, and they lay down so their heads like below your knees and have to get themselves up again. Some kids want to stay down there for a while, but when they're ready to come up again, that's a really fun way of working on those ab muscles. And a routine way of working on that is just after every diaper change, instead of letting your kid roll over, have themselves pull themselves up to sitting. And then there's lots of great ways of playing airplane. Just like Allie was saying earlier, just holding your kiddo this way under their shoulders and their hips. And some kids love looking in the mirror, and that really motivates them to lift up their heads. Other kids really are motivated by trying to get mom or dad, or see where's mom and dad, playing peekaboo. There's a video here that we'll share that shows with a little one doing it on your shins, but sometimes with older kids, we need to do it that way also because they're just not strong enough to do it any other way. So this gives them the most support of all, is doing it on your shins or on an exercise ball gives them nice support too.
Do you want me to play the video now?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. I'm gonna move us over and then I think it'll play.
Flying baby. This exercise is good for balance and muscle strength for both you and your baby. Lay on your back with your knees bent at a 90-degree angle. Place your baby stomach down onto your shins, facing towards you. Hold your baby's shoulders. If you are worried that your baby will fall backwards, you can hold them at their hips instead. Move your lower legs up and down. Each time you can straighten your legs a little more, so in the end your baby is almost upside down. Remember to maintain contact with your baby and use your voice and facial expressions to make it fun.
So you could see with that video that the baby was really motivated by seeing her mom's face. So as her mom lifted her legs higher and higher, the baby had to work harder and harder to lift her head. But because she had that engagement with her mom, she was really enjoying it and motivated and could really lift her head nice and high. So it was a great way to do it. And so I remember doing shins is a great place to start. I remember doing it on my parents' feet too, and the really daring kids love doing that, and that is an even great challenge for strengthening those core muscles too. And then we haven't really talked much about rotation, but the best way that I have for working on that is setting up a game or toys that has a lot of pieces, so that there's some pieces on by one hip and some pieces by the other hip, so that your kid is turning back and forth. Say if there were puzzle pieces on this side and the puzzle was on this side, you'd have to pick up the piece and turn it over here. The hardest part about that one is if your kid's not great at rotation, they're going to want to turn their whole body over here and turn their whole body over there. So you kind of have to keep their lower body in one spot to really get that rotation. But for younger kids, it could just be blocks or Legos. You grab your Legos over here and build them on this side. Anything that has lots of pieces, shape sorter, anything like that. So that's part of core strength too. And then the horsey game, where a kid is on your lap and you're bouncing them and tipping them side to side and forward and back, really works on all those core muscles because you're moving all those different directions. And when you're doing it unexpectedly, then it really works on their balance and equilibrium and that quick response time too. And it makes me think of when my son was 2, he loved wrestling on the floor. He still loves wrestling around. This next one, tumbling on the floor together. We do want to make it non-competitive. A lot of kids are not going to enjoy it if you're like, I win, or I'm going to hold you down, or that kind of thing. But if everybody gets to have a good time and everybody wins, then it's the best. And there is a good example here in this video that Allie's going to play.
Oh, thank you. Wow. Okay, everybody can come play.
So this is just a clip of this video. If you watch the whole thing, you see that the kids are really uncertain in the beginning because they don't know what to expect. But after the first kid goes, you can see at the end there, they were all so excited to get in there. And it's such a fun way to play
Okay, well, that is core strength, kind of what it is, why it matters, what you should possibly be seeing at some different ages, and then some activities that you can use to help promote more core strength in your child. So we hope that was helpful and that you feel empowered to help your child through this stage of life. And if you have any questions, please leave them on the webpage here at this link.